All right, we'll go ahead and get started. We'll convene the Land Use Committee meeting of November 15th. I'm Scott Diener, council member. We'll go ahead and do introductions.
Jay Pepe, council member.
Fred Chang, council member.
Nick Bond, community development director.
Jim Fisk, senior planner.
Paul Fontenot, planning intern.
And the mayor should be joining us here in a few minutes. He just was returning from an appointment.
Okay, well, we can go ahead and get started. Any additions to the agenda? Any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and start the discussion of the first item, which is parking at the end of Bay Street pedestrian pathway.
Yeah, so this item, you've heard Stanley Smith comment a couple of times at city council meetings. He's been having issues with parking at the end of the trailhead here on Bay Street. And his request after I spoke to him was that the signs currently say that this is a 4-hour parking zone from, if you zoom in here, you can see 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And his request was that if this sign was changed to be 4-hour parking 24 hours a day, that would prevent people who are parking there all night and are causing problems in the middle of the night, including leaving debris, urinating, defecating, that sort of thing, that is a common occurrence in that location. And even though we don't have parking enforcement at those hours, if it became if people weren't following the rules, we could either have parking enforcement come after hours once in a while to do something, or the police could potentially handle it. And so I wanted to bring that to the Land Use Committee for discussion.
So I've certainly seen people parking there. Are there the issues that he's talking about, debris and so on?
I mean, that's what he has told us. I asked to meet him on site and have him show me, specifically what he's talking about, and he was not able to set something like that up. But I told him that I would, escalate his request to change the signs, which also requires a code amendment so that the signs can actually be enforced.
Nick, can you point out his rental property across the street?
It's I think he owns the 3 buildings here, the house, this 2-story building, and then this one with the double-story balcony.
I guess I don't really have an objection to making that a 24-hour parking sign. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I guess my question is, what precedence does that set?
Why would we be setting up something that we know we're not going to be enforcing?
Well, you could enforce it. You just have to make special arrangements for either parking to come write parking tickets or for the police to do it after hours.
Yeah, we'd need a cost-benefit analysis of that. I mean, how much is that going to cost to get them after hours to enforce parking? I'm not inclined to make the change unless we know how much it's going to cost. And I am also concerned about a possible precedent.
Yeah, I guess the only other, consideration is this is a gravel shoulder that existed prior to the pathway, but we don't allow gravel parking lots because when you have, as we've had on some of our other streets, you have people doing work on vehicles, chemicals are getting into the ground, into the stormwater system, and this site really isn't set up for that. There was a lot of brainstorming among staff, but the most basic request was to change the sign. The mayor indicated that he didn't have an objection to changing the sign. Whether we actually follow through and enforce is going to be a different story. But the sign may just deter people from even trying to park there overnight, at least for a while.
I'm not. I can't tell right now. I assume I'm unmuted. Am I?
Yeah, I
are.
can hear you.
Okay. I'm not inclined right now without a little bit more information. I'm more worried about the precedents that this may set. If somebody else says, gee, I have a disturbance in my neighborhood, I want parking to be switched. And, the cost benefit analysis, kind of can, we're not going to be calling out code enforcement all the time to do that.
He will.
Yeah, he will. I'm just saying I don't see the bang for the buck, and I don't, I kind of like what stops anybody else from saying this? Why wouldn't we do this for anybody else? That's my opinion. If it's an issue on the environmental side of the coin, which you have a point there, Nick, my issue would be like, well, if we don't allow, gravel parking that close otherwise, is this something that we should, block off? That's probably, I'd be more inclined to from the environmental standpoint.
Yeah, and I think there's enough users during the daytime that would be upset if the parking and the access to the trailhead was removed. So
Right.
I don't think that's something we would want to do.
Do we know if we plan on paving this during the construction of the pathway? I can't imagine
For
we
phase
wouldn't.
6, I have no idea what the plans are for the trailhead area, whether that gets paved or not.
I would hope that we add that as an add-on if we have to on our own dime to pave that.
What are we referring to?
This parking area at the end of Bay Street pedestrian path. So this is the
Yes,
the
that is
request was
yeah. Our plan is to improve that as part of the pathway.
Yeah.
I know that's the direction I've given Chris and the consultants.
Makes sense.
I haven't seen the plans yet, but that was the direction.
So
And
it will be
Mayor,
updated someday.
Just to catch you up, Rob, there's indifference really, or I should say actually really not necessarily support to change the sign.
Yeah, it's already signed 4 hours.
it's 4 hours until 5 p.m. and the request was that it just be 4 hours all the time.
And so no parking after. No, it's 4 hours till 5 p.m. Yeah, till 5 p.m.
It would just be a 4 hour parking zone 24 hours a day, which is unenforceable unless we made special arrangements after hours.
Yeah, we're probably not going to do that.
Yeah, because then you're going to get calls from, I presume, from Stan.
Yeah, at 9 o'clock at night,
Yep.
there's somebody parked here.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be here.
Okay.
Thumbs down.
Jim, you're going to take the next item on the agenda. I forget which one that is.
Sure.
Well, can we just put a bow around this last item? I think if there are people there that are causing debris or the other concerns that you mentioned, Nick, then that's a separate issue than just parking there.
Yeah, and we have done enforcement periodically there for those types of issues, but usually it's been going on for a little while before enforcement actually occurs.
Okay. All right, McCormick Village Overlay District fourplex building types.
So, as you all probably recall, a few years ago, we adopted the McCormick Urban Village plan. And as part of the implementation of that, we adopted McCormick Village Overlay District regulations. The intent really was to create a compact, walkable neighborhood with a mix of residential structures and a range of land uses. What we've discovered going through our housing action plan and discussions with the developer is that what we omitted was a fourplex building type. So we've kind of looked at this and would agree that a middle housing building type like a fourplex would be appropriate here. So staff developed some draft regulations which create the fourplex building type, create some standards associated with it. And it was pretty straightforward from us anyway. And so then we contacted the developer and said, this is kind of what we're thinking. What do you think? And they actually came back to us at the end of this document. You'll notice there's some design standard stuff. There's some architectural variety. they asked for that to be included in this update. And in speaking with some of the staff at the Permit Center, when it comes to architectural variety, that has been traditionally handled under 20.139, our residential design standards. That requires a certain number of facades and different roof types to kind of break up that monotony. But in this instance, there's going to be a mix of not only single family detached, but apartment, forecourt apartments, and then if ultimately adopted, this fourplex townhome building type and sale home. So obviously there's a huge variety of building types that would occur in here. And so the amendment really would account for all the different residential building types instead of just creating a variety of detached houses. There's also some cleanup as related to the porch definition and some clarity in how we measure the porch. And then again, we were relying on 20.139 for the residential design standards. What we've done is we've kind of taken 139, moved it over into the overlay district as a new section, and kind of tweaked it a little bit. There's some things that work there and some things that don't, some things that needed some clarification from 20.139. So we think that we've kind of addressed the developer's issue, created another middle housing type that we can implement, and really straightened out the design standards. So it's very clear that anything that develops in the overlay district, that it would be subject to these standards.
And so their feedback came in the form of building design comments at section .285. Is that what you were saying, Jim?
285 and 290. They essentially copied the section from 20.139 and pasted it in there, which was actually a surprise. But it didn't really fit what the intent of that plan is. And so we've kind of changed things here and there, made it a little bit more clear in how to implement it, and then kind of sent it back to them. We had quite a bit of back and forth, and on some things we kind of had to put our foot down, and they accepted them in the way we proposed them.
So, okay. So that was my next question. In the end, they're happy with what we're looking at here today.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I looked through it and I didn't see anything that jumped out at me. I don't know about Jay or Fred. Did you have any comments?
No, Mike, I have more of a question. This will help our density and the missing middle that we've talked about before, correct?
That is partly the intent, yes.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't have any objections. Jim, would this be any taller or bigger than the current allowed units?
For the most part, the heights are the same as you'd find in any other district. It's really just providing a greater variety of building types that are allowed. The setbacks are different than you'd find elsewhere in the city. That's really the biggest difference between them, and any platted lot. Well, any building on a platted lot has to take vehicular access from an alley. That's not true elsewhere in the city. In this case, anytime you're going to build a residential building, the vehicle access it from an alley. So you're not going to have a lot of driveway cuts, things like that.
Right.
The intent really is to have kind of a narrow, walkable street front.
How small can the units be?
The only one that we regulate on size of the unit itself is in the Paseo house. And I believe, I have to scroll up here, I believe the minimum or the maximum square footage is 1,200 square feet, but I don't like to say things from memory. I always like to look them up, but it's here in the packet. The only one that has a minimum size is the Paseo house.
And Councilmember Chang, to your previous question, the standards for a fourplex are going to be the same as for a forecourt apartment, which allows 5 or more dwelling units. For some reason, we just missed that 4-unit building type. So I don't think the heights differ for a fourplex versus the forecourt apartment, right, Jim?
Correct.
Okay, that sounds good. It doesn't sound like it will be distinguishable necessarily from the other buildings that are there.
You know, I've seen some preliminary drawings of it, and really, it's just a 2-story building, and 2 units on the ground floor, 2 units on the front. The access to the ground floor units is actually on the sides of the building, but the front has a long porch with a shared entry for the upstairs units.
Yeah.
So we intend to introduce this to the Planning Commission at the December meeting, and hopefully schedule a public hearing for this in January, and then get it to the City Council sometime after that.
Okay.
And to answer your question, the principal building footprint is the minimum is 600 square feet and 1,200 in a Paseo house.
All right. One thing that I continue to like is that we have sort of the menu option that the developer can choose from. So I really like the flexibility that gives to the developer to choose out of the following menus what you're going to incorporate in your design. Anything else? Anybody? Jay, you good?
I'm good.
All right. If nothing else, then let's talk about the 23 comp plan amendments.
Yeah, so the Planning Commission has recommended approval of the second iteration of the 2023 comprehensive plan amendments. Normally, you're only allowed to amend the comprehensive plan once per year, but capital facilities related amendments are allowed more than once. And so this is to kind of clean up the capital facilities element in our transportation improvement program to match what was approved in the recent budget that was adopted. The transportation improvement program was reviewed by the Transportation Committee, and really we just updated the project amounts based on recent engineers' estimates for some projects. We recognize grant funding that's been received and then made some adjustments to project timing based on when funding is becoming available. I don't think that you are going to see any projects that you haven't previously discussed on the list. And then the capital facilities element, the only change is that we have added a line to identify that we need to acquire property for city administration offices and public and city parking. And of course, we're negotiating for a purchase of a building right now. And this, in order to make that purchase, that has to be identified in our comprehensive plan. And so this change puts that, sort of paves the way for that acquisition. So real simple cleanup changes at the end of the year here that are mainly related to capital facilities and budget.
Yep.
And so our intent,
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
I was going to say our intent is to discuss this at the work study meeting next Tuesday with the full council, just so that everybody has seen this before it comes up for a vote on the 28th of November.
It's not a lot of red line in it.
No, pretty straightforward.
Yeah, pretty straightforward, pretty usual. All right. I think that's it then. Anything else good of the order?
I've got one I'll just share. I know this is coming from Public Works, but I shared it with Jay earlier today. So, and I knew this was coming. The roundabout by KFC, there's 2 conditions when you can't pave, and one is rain and the other is too cold. And now guess what happens in November through March? And so the WashDOT approached us about wintering the project over for their final lift. It's basically done other than the final paving. And I said, I don't care. Just get the road open. And I said, and I want it open tomorrow, but Chris is talking to WashDOT, who then in turn has to talk to their contractor. And I don't know whether some additional ramping, there's a pretty deep trough in that one spot, whether or not that's drivable or not, but that's their call. It's their road. But anyway, that was the direction I gave is, that's fine. We want a good pavement. And it's pretty difficult to do when it's too cold, because the Nix plant, I believe, is in the Tacoma Tide Flats. By the time it travels here, it cools too much for it to compact properly. And then when it's warm enough, it's raining this time of year. So anyway, so we're pushing them to get the road open, and then we'll likely have to drive on it in a bumpy condition until spring.
Rob, is there no other alternative that they can do? Because there are other commercial companies that are doing cement.
It's not cement, it's asphalt. It's the asphalt. That concrete work's done.
It's the last asphalt lift they want to hold off on.
The final pavement lift.
And they didn't. Yeah, I think you're on the right track, because it's not acceptable to keep it closed until March.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think that's what they were proposing, but I quit screwing around. They haven't worked for 2 days. This has been perfect paving web. I was questioning that it's too cold. If you see the patches they did around the ramps they did at Rockwell, you see big rocks in it, because it won't compact as tightly as a properly compact. The asphalt gets too cold and it won't compact.
Why can't they do cement? Isn't that stronger than asphalt?
They'd have to rip the whole thing out to pave it, Fred.
Oh, just that patch of cement or something. Oh, that's too bad.
So anyway, it's going to get blacktopped. It likely won't get blacktopped till spring. So,
whatever they can do between now and then.
Yeah, and let's get those lights out of there and make the intersection drivable.
Or they can put a person there 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Direct
Frank,
traffic.
you work for WashDOT. Why don't you take that up?
Hey, I'm not speaking with my WashDOT hat on, obviously. If this was on the 520, that would just not be acceptable. The big major projects, they wouldn't screw around like they have on this one.
Yeah. Anyway, just sharing the conversation that was had today. The direction was get the road open.
All right. And you said that the soonest they might come back is in
we got to have the right, it's got to not be raining and it's got to be warm enough.
Yeah.
That's April or May.
April. Yeah. Mid-April is, well,
Yeah.
anyways. All right.
They need 50 degrees, is it? Did they say?
They aren't giving me dates. I just know from doing enough of our own project managements when you can pave. And I've been thinking this for a month, if they didn't hurry up and get their final lift done a couple of weeks ago, that we were going to end up in this scenario, and here we are.
Yeah, bottom line is we have to have the road open.
Yeah.
All right. Are the I presume they're gonna button it up, but they're also gonna make it look kind of as nice as it can.
The signs are all up and wrapped. If the landscaping's done, there's street lights missing, but that's a PSE. We deal with that continually, supply chain issues on street lights. So there's some street lights that aren't installed. Those will get installed as soon as PSE can get on site to do it, or had some materials.
Okay. All right.
Not what I wanted to tell you, but that was I think I gave them the right direction, is get the dang road open.
Okay.
The
All right.
only other thing I was going to mention, I think this is our last meeting before the end of the year, and then we're going to reappoint council members in January. So I don't believe we need to have a meeting in December. And so this is our last time with this group, I think.
All right. Paul, do you want to introduce yourself? I don't think I haven't met you or heard more about you. I don't know if others have.
Yeah, I'm just the planning intern that they hired me back in October, and yeah, I'm just sort of getting my feet wet here, just sort of getting bearings and trying to basically get an idea of land use committee and all sorts of different things of how this works. So I thought I'd sit in today.
And Paul is he was our planning commissioner. He made the mistake of showing up at a planning commission meeting and talking about planning issues that really resonated with Jim and I, and we suggested that he apply to be on the planning commission. He served for a while on the planning commission, and when we were doing outreach at the farmers market this summer, he was just really good at talking to the community about planning issues, and so he was helping us with that outreach as a planning commissioner. And we decided to bring him on as an intern. And you have a master's, I think, in history, right? Is that your degree?
Bachelor's as of right now.
Bachelor's, okay. So he's grew up here and is interested in planning issues and is learning about planning in our office and helping out with some permitting stuff.
Nice. Well, thank you, Paul, for your work. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Of course.
It sounds like that's everything.
I think that is everything.
Well, have a great
All right.
evening, everyone.
Okay, see you Tuesday.
Bye now.
See ya. Bye.